it's recording.
Good.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I want to make sure to pronounce your names exactly as you would wish. Do you like Chris or Christopher?
They both work.
Okay. I'll go for Chris. Sheryl, how do you say your last name?
Saddith.
Saddith. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, so just as we're arriving, I wanted to just double check our time frame here. We would like this conversation to go till around 2:30 or just after, and then look at some dates for a next dialogue where all the candidates for CD-08 can attend. And Edwin has extended that invitation to all 5 of you, including Rudy Rutsch, I think he pronounces it, of course, John Garamendi as well. And so for today, we've got until around 2:45. Does that sound okay? Everybody settled in for that period of time? Okay. We want to honor our time and our bodies. So that means if we need a break, any of us, please call it. We can take a few minutes. Usually these dialogues tend to go. We get into a nice rhythm, and there's a nice back and forth. We're getting some deeper clarity. We're getting to know each other, and we're really connecting. And so maybe if somebody wants to jump away for a second, then come back, that's okay too. So I wanted to put that out there. Wanted to introduce myself. I'm Timothy Reagan, a Californian and a San Franciscan, born and raised here in the Bay Area. I'm also a social worker. I'm also a trainer of dialogue and peacemaking and empathy. I train folks in nonviolent communication, and I work at a large healthcare organization in San Francisco. I'm a counselor and a coach, and so I'm also a host of a program on KPFA called Talk It Out Radio on Sunday nights. Myself and 2 women co-host this. And in this program, we are offering a space for to explore the principles and the skills of healthy communication, peacemaking, dialogue, empathy, inclusion, diversity, equity, all those themes we take that on. We're in our 7th or 8th year on KPFA. And I'm so grateful to be able to do that. And I help steward that hour every 3 weeks or so. So we're recording this conversation, and I'm hoping to edit a piece of it down to share this momentous conversation on the air on a Sunday night. Of course, I'll let you know when that goes out. And my intention there is just to show folks that our fellow human beings stepping up to represent us are human and want to be in dialogue and want to bridge our social and political divides, so we can work together in this country for something good, for everyone. And so I'm privileged to be part of this program and this conversation today. So that's a little bit about me. My intention today is to facilitate the process. I'm going to introduce it, and then we'll get started. I'll take it just 4 or 5 minutes just to introduce it, and we'll, of course, clarify if you need. And then, so you're comfortable, and we can have a great dialogue, an inclusive and connecting dialogue. So I do want to say that I believe that this conversation is of a moment, momentous, as it were, because each of you is stepping up into public service and in a form of competition, as some people would see, for a particular representative seat, with strong views representing a whole bunch of people, each of you, a vision. And yet, you've agreed to come together to have a conversation that's not a debate, it's not an argument, but that is intended to co-explore an important question and to hear each other, to find something underneath it all that binds us and brings us forward as a nation. And so it's an amazing conversation. We're about to do this. And the format we're about to use here is an empathy circle. And this is the simplest, most accessible kind of model of dialogue that I've seen, and includes everyone, including me as the facilitator, as humans. And Edwin has been a wonderfully rich and productive proponent of this process of dialogue. And our intention here is that each of us gets to speak to one question for 5 minutes at a time, And during that 5 minutes, that each of us gets to be heard to our satisfaction. And so what that means is that as one of us speaks to the question, we've got 5 minutes, I'll be timing and managing that. you pick somebody in the circle that you'd like to speak to directly. Get the agreement from that person. They say, sure, I'm ready to listen. And then the speaker gets to speak to the question or whatever's on your mind or heart in the moment. And make sure to pause, because as you're speaking, after about 30 seconds or a minute, it's a lot for the listener to catch. So you might want to pause and give the listener a chance to say back what they hear you saying, what they hear you meaning, what they hear you saying, until you say yes, or that's not quite it. And that's how we get to being heard to your satisfaction. The listener gets to reflect back a little bit and say, do I get it? Did I get that? And then you get to say yes or no and clarify for a period of 5 minutes at a time. And when that time's up, maybe one last reflection, we'll pause there. And then the speaker gets to take a breath, sit back. The listener, it's their turn now to speak to the question or to whatever's on your mind and heart for 5 minutes to somebody else in the circle. And that way it proceeds around the circle, each of us. And as every round comes around, we realize, oh, I didn't say that, or something else I wanted to say. Or maybe there's something I really was starting to understand about that other person I'm really curious about. So that's basically how it works. Pretty straightforward. Make sure as you're speaking to pause and let your listener give them a chance to say, okay, did I get that? And so in a way, we're slowing down, but we're also making sure that you've been heard. We're going to try to have equal turns for each of us, because this is in the setting of a political race, right? So we want equal time, of course. So I'll be keeping that in my mind as a facilitator. I've also got this little sign. When you see this, your 5 minutes is basically up. And I invite you to finish that thought, and maybe we can get one last reflection from the listener. Say, hey, did I catch that? Did I catch the essence of that? And then the listener will have a chance to pick somebody else and go for 5 minutes. Now, I want to say this right at the beginning. What is the question we're speaking to today? We're invited, each of us, to speak to this. How might we bridge the social and political divides in our communities and country? Or, of course, speak to whatever's on your mind and heart in the moment as we're in this conversation. Once again, how might we bridge the social and political divides in our communities and country, or whatever's on your mind and heart? And so as the facilitator, I'm a fellow human with you. I am included in the dialogue, so I will be listening. When I speak, I'm not going to say too much. I really want to give each of the three of you a moment to speak, but maybe there's something that comes up. So I'll be included in the circle. This is the way this circle works. And of course, I'll make sure to, that each of you has multiple chances to speak for 5 minutes each time. So I'm going to pause there. I want to see if there's any questions just about the structure of this dialogue. And I invite us, of course, to relax, clarify anything before we begin. I will be inviting one of you to speak to me first, and then I'll model how that listening works. And then I'll speak next, and I'll speak, and we'll just model that. So that's how we'll begin. But is there any questions about this process as you're sitting there? It's really important for me to hear that this feels comfortable to you, or, that this makes sense. Anything coming up?
I don't have any questions, but I do need to tell you guys that it is Ramadan, and I need to go off camera for the next couple of minutes because it's prayer time. So there.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we want to absolutely honor that. 2 or 3 minutes, please take care of that.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, and of course, that's the space we want to hold an empathy circle. We take great care of ourselves. This is moving away from structures of should and have to, and, control and domination. No. We're human beings coming together with our backgrounds and our well-being. So very good. Okay, so to begin, what I wanted to do, well, first of all, I wanted to make sure, I know Sheryl is off camera. I want to make sure Sheryl's still here and is able to listen, but I also don't want to interrupt her prayers. So I'm thinking I'd like to pause for another minute or two until she's complete and see if there's any other questions about the process or anything I missed there. Edwin, Chris, even just before we begin, I just really want to make sure Sheryl's back fully. Anything else coming up as you've listened so far?
No questions for me.
Okay. Oh yeah, and before we actually begin the process, I do want to give each of you exactly like 1 minute to share for this dialogue who you are, what you're up to as a candidate for California Congressional District 8. Just 1 minute, super brief overview as an introduction. That'll be nice to share on the air, so people know who you are and a little bit about where you're coming from. So if you can kind of prepare that in your mind right now, and I'll just time that for 1 minute each, and we'll do that.
I guess if you have a question, are you sharing this on online platforms as well on video, or are you only sharing audio?
It will be video, and it'll be on Timothy's show, as well as we'll put it on YouTube, and you can repost it to wherever you'd like.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're making a copy, you're welcome to, I'll have a copy and you can use that, or you can make your own copy. I mean, hit the record button so you have your own copy. I'm good with us starting, Timothy. We don't need to wait. If we want to do introductions, maybe Sheryl will just introduce herself at the end. So
She's ready. Okay, yeah, I want to honor our time and use it well. So thank you, Edwin. Okay, so Chris Riley or Edwin Rutsch and Sheryl Saddith, when you're ready, any of you, please go ahead and we'll just give you a minute to introduce yourselves.
okay, I'm fine with starting. So I'm Edwin Rutsch. I'm director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I've been working for about 14, 15 years to see how we can create a more empathic society, how we can foster listening, dialogue, and empathy and mutual understanding, and have a website that's the largest website for empathy-related material. So my campaign is really about how do we raise the level of empathy in society. And that's really, I'm trying to address the social polarization that's happening in the country, because I think it's very dysfunctional what's happening. The country is becoming more and more polarized. And so my campaign is really about how to bridge those divides and to be nurturing, connection and empathy for everyone. So that's my minute.
Thank you, Edwin Rutsch.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Chris Riley. I am a high school teacher in Hayward. I also have a law degree from Penn State. And I work specifically in government and cybersecurity law, and there's a lot to go there. I produced a documentary about election security, campaign finance, and the 2016 election that is on Amazon Prime. And it's, part of that is a lot of the, polarization that Edwin was talking about. I am, one of the main reasons I'm running is I'm the son of an immigrant, and I'm a millennial, and I think we need more representation for both of those groups. And I think it's my generation's time to start stepping up, because we need to take more responsibility for our future. And the people who are in power right now, I think, have not done a great job of working together with the younger generations.
Thank you so much, Chris Riley.
Thank you. Sheryl Saddith. I spent the last 25 plus years as an international negotiator, and I've done some mediation myself. So you're in good company. But really focusing on building relationships and coalitions, writing and championing state and national policies and legislation that addresses a variety of our social issues, jobs, affordable housing, homelessness, environmental justice. I'm a scientist. I'm an environmental scientist. I'm a cell and molecular biologist and biochemist. And so most of what I focus on a lot in my daily life is dealing with that, healthcare and mental health issues. I work a lot with young people and dealing with those kind of issues: clean air, clean water, clean food, the criminal legal system, educational equity, and just making sure we have youth opportunities. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Sheryl Saddith. Okay, so let's begin. And once again, we each will be speaking for 5 minutes on this question: how might we bridge the social and political divides in our communities and country? Or, of course, speak to whatever is on your mind and heart in the moment. I'd like to invite one of you to begin, and you'll speak to me, and I'll model the reflective listening, so remember to pause, every minute or so, and to see if I'm with you, and I'll do my best. And I'll be keeping time as well for 5 minutes. Any of you might want to begin?
Sure, I'd love to start.
Go ahead, Chris.
So it does feel like we are more hyperpolarized than we've ever been before, more partisan. And it's a big problem to tackle. And there's a few, quotes that I think of, and there's been some great, during COVID especially, people are, we have less opportunity for community. And when we do go out in community, it's usually with people who are in our groups and agree with maybe a lot of the same things we agree with. So it probably drove people with different beliefs even further away. And I think there's a quote that my father always used to tell me when I was growing up, seek first to understand before you're understood. And I think that's something that I think could be really important for a lot of us, trying to place ourselves in the position of others, and part of that, what empathy is. And I think of great leaders that have shown that empathy. For me, one of my political idols is Bobby Kennedy, who he did a lot of work for migrant farm workers and for children and for people all over the country that were suffering from poverty, when he didn't need to think about it necessarily, because he came from a really wealthy family. So I think we've come into this.
I want to pause you there because you've shared a lot and it's so meaningful. I want to make sure I catch at least some of it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I invite, whenever you're a listener, it's okay to put your hand up and say, wait, let me make sure I get some of that. Just going backwards, like just speaking about, a political idol of yours, Bobby Kennedy, not needing to go and look to represent the interests of poor people and immigrants and everything. And he really took that on, and you really admire that. And there was also a quote that really has stood out to you, like empathy being to seek to understand before trying to be understood. That's meaningful for you. And so I just wanted to catch those two things. Is there anything I missed in where you were going?
No, I think those, I would say, are very important in I think my life, but also hopefully in my campaign, what I think we need going forward. I think as I look at how politics has become, especially the idea of debating or disagreement, I'm going to bring another of a favorite quote out of one of my professors from undergrad. She said, "If you and I agree on everything, then one of us is irrelevant." And I don't think anybody in this country is irrelevant. I think that everybody, no matter what your stance or belief is, or political party or ideology, you are not irrelevant. You deserve to be heard. And I think too many times we have, maybe politicians will only pay attention to the 51% of people that got them into office and ignore the other 49% of people. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest things is actually, acknowledging that although we disagree with somebody's beliefs or ideology, that does not mean that it doesn't deserve to be heard. And when we become combative, we just back into our corners, and it no longer becomes about learning from each other. It becomes about winning. I just want to win for the sake of winning, and I want to make sure that they lose so that they have no legitimate space to disagree with me. And that has taken away so much possibility for not only consensus, but also innovation, because I believe that disagreement builds innovation. Because if someone's going to challenge something that I've believed, it's going to make me think, well, okay, could this be wrong, or could this be different? Could it be better? And I don't think the first iteration of any bill or book or idea is ever perfect when it's first made. It becomes better and better every time there's disagreement, and every time we accept that disagreement and try to work with it to either prove ourselves correct or find a better way.
Thank you. And I hear your deep value for the dynamic power of disagreement, and not just debate and winning to win and leaving the 49% out. You value collaboration because it actually engages in innovation and creativity. And so you see that as a foundation for how we all and representatives in our democracy can conduct ourselves. Everyone deserves to be heard. They're valuable and they're relevant. Whoops, there's the timer. Did I get most of that? Or is there anything, like for the last moment here, maybe you can correct something that I missed? Anything at all?
No, I think that's a great way to kind of summarize and put that into more succinct 10 seconds.
Thank you. So yeah, so that was a demonstration of this basic empathy circle structure. And Chris, what I'm hearing you say is, I feel heard. Like, yes, that worked for me. Great. That's where we want to be able to get in 5-minute increments, small pieces. So thank you, Chris Riley. And so in this format, then I'll speak next. I was just a listener, now I'll speak. I'm not going to go for 5 minutes, but I would ask Sheryl Saddith to hear me. Would that be okay? Okay, great. So I'll just start the timer, but my intention is not to go for 5. I just want to say how in this moment, what's alive for me is how moved I am to be sitting in a room of such devotion to service. Because, you know, I'm a social worker, I value empathy and collaboration, and I coach people and I counsel people, but I have not been in public service. In fact, I am intimidated by it because I see complexity and I see challenges and I see just heavy duty challenges in leadership, you know. And so I'm moved to be in your presence, Edwin's and Chris's presence, in a conversation like this of meaning, right? For the well-being of everyone. And so I want to thank you, all 3 of you, for stepping up into this modern fray of our national government at this wild time. So I'll just pause there.
Can I ask you what intimidates you about it?
Okay, I want to pause there. In the empathy circle process, I would love to answer that question. And in the listening role in this particular model, we're inviting the listener just to summarize what you've heard me say so far. And we're just kind of doing that listening. And when it comes to your turn, then you could say, hey, while you were talking, I got really curious about why are you intimidated? Maybe next time you could talk about it, you know. But so in this moment, what did you hear me say? And just in a few words, and to see if you got me.
I hear you saying you were moved by the public service that is being portrayed in the room, and it feels overwhelming and even intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a powerful feeling.
Yeah, it's
moment.
Yeah, it's a powerful feeling. I'm not overwhelmed, and I don't necessarily feel intimidated by each of you. In fact, I have
no, not by people. You said it's intimidating moment.
Yeah,
that's the word I wrote down.
Yes, in history, in our national politics. Yeah, for me personally.
Yes, Here's what I wrote down.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. And then I would just add maybe a couple lines that, you know, it's intimidating because of the emotional intensity. And for me, it's hard to speak when I don't feel safe. You know, my system, you know, when I don't have support or I don't feel safe, it's hard for me to speak my own piece sometimes. And so, because I want to be heard. If somebody doesn't want to hear me, I don't want to, force my views on anybody. So anyway, they're working at the public level, the national level is just like, it feels like it's above my my grade level. And so, and at the same time, I'm learning, as I listen today too. So I'll leave it there. If you wanted to reflect that piece, that's great. And then we'll
yeah. Yeah, I hear you. It's hard to speak when you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And working at a public level or a national level, I feel like it's above your pay grade.
Yeah, above my grade in school. But yeah, and I'm inspired at the same time. So yeah, I guess that's why I'm grateful for each of you for doing that. Okay, so I feel complete and heard. Thank you so much, Sheryl, Saddith. So I'd love to restart the timer. Maybe you can pick somebody you'd like to speak to for your 5 minutes. Once again, speaking to the question, how might we bridge the social and political divides in our communities and country, or whatever is on your mind and heart. Go ahead, Sheryl.
So I'll complete the circle. I'll speak to Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Sure. So, and I'll answer the question that was posed, but I'll also add to it because, the question that was posed, and I'll say this, part of it is that we don't have conversations. We don't have real, true conversations where people are actually listening to understand. People listen to respond. People don't talk with a mindset for solutions. They talk with a mindset to be right. And that way I do agree with Christopher. We are always going to disagree on something.
So what I'm hearing is you agree with Christopher that people aren't really listening to hear each other and to solve problems, and that they're listening to speak. And
yes, people want to have their turn. There is a saying by Gandhi that I have on my board at work. I have two boards at work. I have a white board and a black board. And you write on them with chalk markers. And there is a saying on one of them that my daughter actually found when she's my youngest, actually found when she was a very small child. She was in elementary school. And it's by Gandhi. And it says, speak only if it improves the silence. And many people need to learn this lesson, right? We are going to disagree on some things. But if you can come to the table with honesty, you can restore respect and you can find solutions. But many people prefer a pretty lie to an ugly truth.
okay, so what I'm hearing there's a quote by Gandhi about just speak if you're going to contribute to the conversation. There's a contribution, and that you feel that the people are maybe just doing more lying than really speaking the truth. And that's a very meaningful quote to you. It's because it's up on your whiteboard or blackboard.
Yes, well, I won't say that people are lying. I will say that they prefer people to lie to them, right? Than to tell the truth. Sometimes the truth may be clothed in ugly clothing, than a lie in pretty clothing. So people are very sensitive that way. They would rather you not tell them the truth if it's going to be something that they cannot handle. And the thing about the quote that I wanted you to get from that is, sometimes silence speaks volumes. My mother used to say, my grandmother used to say.
So, sorry. Go ahead. Well, let me just reflect back quickly so I get everything. So there's sometimes silence actually says a lot, and you see that is really important. And the other part is that people maybe don't want the truth because the truth will affect them and they'll feel pain or something. So they would rather hear a lie than hear the truth.
Exactly. So I'm an elected official already, right? So you hear a lot of times when someone come up to the podium to speak, and they'll say, I agree with the last person. Or they say the same thing as the last person, rather than contribute something substantial to the conversation. Or when we have a panel of 5 of us, instead of adding something substantial to the conversation, it is to hear yourself speak. And many times, if I don't have something substantial to say to the conversation, I pass and I say, no, I have nothing to say. Or thank you for the presentation, great presentation, but I'm not going to go on and speak if I do not have a substantial thing to say on the conversation. And that is the difference with having a conversation or speaking to hear yourself speak. That is what that quote means. And sometimes in the political realm, we have to learn when we are speaking to hear our voice or when we are speaking to add value to a conversation. So the political discourse in your original question has to be, when are we going to get back to having a conversation, or are we just debating to debate?
So you're seeing that the question relates to when is it when we're having a conversation to really hear each other versus just to debate. And you see in panels that people will speak just to hear themselves speak instead of really to contribute something new to the conversation, because that contributing of something new is what a conversation is about.
New and meaningful.
New and meaningful to the conversation. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak to Chris then. Yeah, I feel a lot of gratitude to everyone taking part in this dialogue, because I see that that's what is needed in the political sphere, is for the candidates and the politicians to really start listening to each other. So I'm just sharing a lot of gratitude for everyone taking part in this dialogue. So if you want to reflect what you heard.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that, I even just lost the word, but you're feeling gratitude for us being here, and also belief that these conversations are what need to happen between more politicians and candidates in order to create a better situation.
Yeah, and we did reach out to the other two. There's two other candidates running. There's three of us are running as Democrats, and there's a Republican, Rudy Rakyle, and he couldn't make this time slot. So that's why he's not here, just because the timing didn't work. But I hope that in the future we'll have a discussion that includes him.
Yes, I guess if I'm hearing you, all candidates for District 8 were invited. I believe Rudy just was a scheduling issue and has nothing to do with party or anything. And hopefully we can have another chance to speak between all of us, including Rudy, and hopefully Garamendi as well.
Yeah, and John Garamendi have sent multiple emails inviting him to take part. Never heard anything back, so I'm not sure what that means, as if he hasn't seen it or he's not interested. So I don't know what that really means. So I have some curiosity around why he didn't respond.
So I'm hearing that you were kind of unsure about Garamendi's either availability or even desire to participate with the other candidates for his district, and not participate in what I think from earlier you believe is very important tool and way that we should be communicating together.
Yeah, and so what I'm really hoping is that I hope to work together with both of you to bridge the divides in our District 8. So I'm glad to work with everyone in the district to see how we can bridge the divides in our district, because there's all kinds of social, political divides, and people not getting along. And I really appreciate what you said too, Chris, about the importance of listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is that I think you want to use this as an opportunity, and for us to be kind of the beginning of what your vision is for empathy and for communication and bridging the divide. And also I think having us kind of be the leaders of doing that as an example.
Yeah, I would like to take this process to Congress, to have like Republicans and Democrats actually come together, in the House and in the Senate, to actually start listening to each other. Like maybe every month they have an empathy circle to really hear each other, and it's recorded and made publicly available. And the question would be, how do they bridge the divide? Because nothing's getting done in Congress. And I think it really starts with mutual listening.
Yeah. So you think that this is something that should be done in Congress, and that makes me think of a question. So if you feel like speaking to, because
if you just reflect back, you can, when it's your turn, you can bring up anything, okay, but just reflect back for now.
Okay.
Yeah, so the part about the Congress, that we need that within the Congress, the empathy circle was the main point.
Yeah, and I believe you said you also want it to be recorded and shown for the American people to be able to see these interactions.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, what else? And I hope to hear in our community, this is the first of the circles, in our community. So I hope we can hold more. I'd love to work with both of you, like I was saying, to do more, have more of these dialogues. And I got 22 seconds left. I think that the listening, kind of a deep listening, and I really like I agree with what you're saying about that from conflict, where we listen to each other, it comes creativity and innovation. So it's really the source. If we want to have more creativity and innovation in our district or in our country, it's going to come from addressing our conflicts with mutual listening and dialogue.
So I'm hearing that, you want to make sure that, or you would be excited for this to continue between all of us to keep using this process so that the people can see us trying to bridge these divides between different people. And also that you are in agreement with some of the things I said about innovation coming out of the discussion between opposing sides.
Yeah, I think that's my time, right? So I feel fully heard. Yeah.
That is time. Great. So now, if you noticed, we've completed one cycle. Each of us has had a moment to speak and be heard to our satisfaction. And now, Chris, Riley, you have the floor. I invite you to choose anybody to speak to, and then we can go around. So we're speaking and listening to different people. So anybody who you would like to, and we'll continue on.
Can I started last round. Well, I guess it's fine. We'll keep the same. So then I'll talk, I guess.
Before you begin, Chris, who would you like to speak to specifically so that person can reflect and make sure you're heard?
So I was actually going to go back to Edwin because I kind of have a question that's similar to things Edwin had said, excuse me.
Great.
So Edwin, what I had heard during one of yours is also having the process on camera and available for people to see. And that comes into something that I think is actually really important to me, which is, transparency. And when I look at some of the issues that a majority of Americans seem to be upset about, especially when it comes to politicians, is, the transparency of kind of the whole process, elections, money, and how things get done. And it just brought to mind issues of like lobbyists and how corporate money works in our politics. And I think that corporate money also helps strengthen the division, because where money is involved, people are spending millions and billions of dollars to divide the American people so that they can get something to go their way.
Can you pause? Let me reflect that back. So the other part I'm hearing is it's the transparency that you hear is really important. The part of recording and making public, you really resonate with that. It's because you're seeing the importance of transparency, and that lobbyists and so forth are sort of blocking that transparency. You don't know what's going on, and that's a real concern of yours.
Yes. And I think, we have a society of free and open speech. But I think when we allow so much speech to be hidden and money behind that speech to be hidden, it kind of changes the rules of the game. And now you can have people attacking politicians or ideas or laws, and we don't know why. We don't know why these things are being attacked or being pressed upon us in the news or on social media. And I think if we can't understand, if we were having this empathy circle, but I wasn't able to know or see any of you, I think it would be a lot harder for us to have empathy with each other. And it would be a lot harder for us to build any consensus. So why are we allowing our political and election system to be full of faceless, nameless characters that are pushing agendas and millions and billions of dollars into the system?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that you see the importance of transparency, and that you need that transparency for hearing each other and problem solving. And then why is there all this blocking of that transparency with the media or different, and that's something you really want to address.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to take a page out of Sheryl's lines right here. I don't know that I have anything at the moment that I think would add to what I've just said, so I will hand it over to the next person.
Okay, so you feel heard to your satisfaction, and I will speak then. Great, then I'll speak to Timothy. All right.
Okay, listening.
Yeah, I think there's a core set of values that we really need to raise up in society, and it starts with that mutual listening, and that empathy is sort of the core values.
Okay, so yeah, there's a list of core values you want to raise up in society, and right at the top of that list is mutual listening and empathy.
And it's the mutuality, I think, that is missing, that it's the different sides mutually taking responsibility and listening to each other, be it, community police, Republicans, Democrats, any kind of social groups, so I think it's really saying everyone has to take responsibility to take part in dialogue and in listening.
So it's not just listening and dialogue, but everybody has to be willing to step up and actually practice it. It's mutual. It's not just one-sided listening.
Yeah.
All parties on different sides of issues, police and community, et cetera, et cetera.
And from there, that transparency that Chris is talking about, I totally resonate with that the more open and transparent we can be, the deeper we can connect with each other. So that openness and transparency is a core, another core value. I think these are values for the whole country. I think it's like we need a cultural shift, a values shift within the country. And these are some of the core values we need to raise up in the society.
Mm-hmm. Cultural shift in the values that guide the conduct of people all through this country. Number one being not just listening and empathy, but mutual listening and empathy. Number two being transparency or honesty, something like that. Did I get that?
Yeah, that's because the more open and transparent we can be, the deeper we can connect with each other. And you have to also feel safe to be able to do that. I think you had brought up safety. Like if we're not feeling safe to speak freely, that's going to inhibit too.
Mm-hmm. So safety is a piece of this too. It's hard to speak freely and openly if you're under threat.
So I'm all for free speech, but I think what's missing is free empathy. So, which is we need free listening too. It's two parts of the coin. There's a sense of responsibility, right? It's like, sure, you can have free speech, but if nobody's listening and everybody's just fighting to be heard and they're not listening to each other, it's very ineffective. And here we're sort of modeling, everybody gets heard to their satisfaction. So I think what we're doing here is sort of modeling a way forward. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in this moment, what you're hearing is a possible way forward. We're experiencing it and moving from not just free speech, but almost like the right or the responsibility to listen, at least to understand each other. Not necessarily agree, but understand each other. So free empathy, free speech, going to both together, yes?
Yeah. And I'm wondering what the other, participants here, what everyone feels are the problems in our district. Where do you see the conflicts that are happening? So I see the community policing, is one big issue. Our district, I think, is only 14% Republican, something like 60 some odd percent Democrat. So, I don't know. So I'm sad that Rudy's not here, so we could hear the Republican point of view. So I'm just wondering, I'm curious where others see the conflict in our community.
Got it. So you're sitting with just an authentic curiosity. What do other candidates here and others like who aren't here, Rudy Rasil and John Garamendi, where this group sees the conflicts and the attention needed? Is that right? Did I get close?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel heard. Yeah, that's my time too. I feel fully heard.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Edwin. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Oh, then that's Sheryl again. Yes. I'd love to speak to you, Sheryl Saddith, because I want to make sure we keep going and keep our circle moving. And once again, thank you for listening last time. I'm aware of a conversation I had today. I was helping a neighbor with some beekeeping, and her son, who lives up near Sacramento, maybe in CD-08, Congressional District 8, I'm not sure. Caucasian man, father of two. We're hanging out, and I told him that I was going to be participating and facilitating this conversation today. And I said, how do we bridge the social and political divides in our communities and our country? And someone I know, Edwin Rutsch is running for the National House of Representatives with this question and with some ideas around dialogue. And without even half a second passing, he laughed, shook his head. Good luck. Totally dismissed the idea within, I was surprised how quickly. And in that moment, of course, I felt sad at in some parts of our world, how quickly we are dismissing the possibilities of connection. And then I described this particular circle, and that I'm actually excited about it, and it's actually happening. It's not just a possibility. And you know what he said? He actually said, wow, you know what? That conversation is the first one we should all be having. That maybe is the only conversation right now. And then he further went on to say, he said, if it's not the only conversation, because there's others, but at least it should be the first one. And I was heartened and grateful that he got that and that he heard this was happening. He says, tell me about your radio show. I want to hear this. He was really curious. And it was a warm connection of hope. Thank you. Edwin just held up a sign that I should hold up for myself. And that is, remember to pause, give Sheryl a chance to say some of that back. But anyway, that's the story and how I felt there. And go ahead if you want to catch some of that.
So what I'm hearing, what I heard, is that you had a conversation with someone, and I believe I caught in the Sacramento area, who had a son in the Sacramento area. You're not sure if it's his district or not. And you related them that you knew someone who was running for CD-08, and you spoke of this forum that we're having right now. And they immediately dismissed the possibility, this conversation, this meeting, and they laughed about it. And you were saddened, but about the dismissal, about the possibility of a connection. And then you explained it more in detail, and then it switched that this conversation should be one of the first that should be had. And then you were then heartened by the reaction. And then they asked you about your radio program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then Edwin held up the sign. They say you need to
Edwin said, pause, take a breath, Timothy.
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm kind of good on that. The detail I'm kind of good at.
Thank you. No, you got it. And when as I'm hearing you, Sheryl, reflect my experience, he dismissed it within half a second, but then I had 4 minutes probably to tell him a little bit more, and it shifted him. And he's like, whoa, yeah, that's amazing. That's cool. This is happening. And so it just took 4 more minutes to say, actually, yeah, you can speak to your satisfaction and make a couple agreements, and it's possible. And he felt hopeful within 4 minutes of me sharing about this conversation right here. And that gives me hope, because I can get dark and, give up or hide out or, just buy into a lot of the hype online and, but when you really, it just took 4 minutes to shift things around. And I made a new friend actually today talking about this. So the connection is real, human connection. And we all have that capacity, even if we're feeling a lot of doubt and fear. It just takes a few minutes. So I'm rejuvenated by that.
So it took only 4 minutes to help him feel hopeful. That gave you hope. The connection is real, and you were rejuvenated by it.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you. And that's my time, and I feel fully heard. Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you. So I want to talk to, I think I'll talk to Christopher. And I think I'm gonna talk a little different because all of this is great, but I think that one of the things that I would tell you guys is that the thing about empathy, and I think I've talked to Edwin about this before. The thing about empathy is great when it goes your way, right? When you get what you want out of it. People feel very empathetic when they have a goal and an understanding that is favorable to them.
So what I'm hearing is you think that empathy is perhaps easier when things are going your way, or when you end up, perhaps the conversation or the result ends up going your way, but it's perhaps more difficult if the empathy doesn't agree with that.
Correct. So, for instance, empathy is not the thing about empathy is when situations are tough, when you have to make a hard choice, that means you have to do sacrifice and you have to give up privilege. That is when you know where your character is. And that's when you know when empathy is on the line. And the majority of people, I will tell you, don't know how to use empathy in the right way. It is a word that is thrown around, but it is not exercised.
So what I heard is that empathy is easier when there isn't a lot on the line for you. It is harder when you have to sacrifice and to make difficult decisions. And that reveals character when a person faced against a challenge still is able to show empathy.
Correct. And I don't mean me. I'm saying this about other people. As a woman of color, as a Black woman, as a Latina, as a Middle Eastern, as a woman with disabilities, as a Muslim, we go through this all day, every day. Somebody who checks most of the boxes in every marginalized community. This is something I live with in my DNA. But for most people live with privilege. This is not something they have to go through. So I always challenge people when they use this word empathy, when you walk with privilege. When you walk with privilege and you use this word, it is something that you have the privilege of using. I find it a very interesting word when someone says be empathetic when you're able-bodied. When you walk without skin that has been kissed by the sun and you're not being judged by that brown or Black skin. When you don't have language that people will judge you by the way that you speak, the way that you walk, your nationality, your creed. It is very easy for people to judge other people that way.
So I'm hearing that empathy, and from the view of someone who comes from privilege, you almost think that it might be a word that they use too frequently or too easily, and they might not see some of the struggles of maybe it's much more difficult to live in a different skin or circumstance, or of a different gender or disability or something, and that makes empathy a much more difficult concept for people who don't have those privileges.
Actually, it's an easier concept for someone like me than it is for someone who doesn't have those. That is what I'm trying to relay to this group and for anyone who's listening. Empathy in and of itself is not something that you should put into the universe or put into someone's vernacular as if it is something that is easy. It is difícil in Spanish, right? It is very difficult to master. And it's not something that we should just tell people it is an easy thing to do, because it is not. And if it is not born from a place that is pure and that is of respect, it is not something that is real.
Empathy isn't easy, and people shouldn't present empathy like it's easy, and that people who have gone through more are able to perhaps empathize more because they have been in those difficult situations, and it should not be used as a simple concept. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just let's continue. Chris, you get to choose anybody you feel moved to speak to, and for your 5 minutes.
I'll speak to Sheryl. I really appreciate, what you had said. I do feel like sometimes there are a lot of people that will kind of use buzzwords or, words like empathy sometimes and not know the full understanding or the full impact of it. And so my mother came to the United States. She fled the Civil War in El Salvador. And she and her family have been through a lot. And I think there's moments when people talk about immigration as if, they understand the situations of the people who are immigrating here and won't give any legitimacy to the violence or fear or danger that they felt. So that was really impactful for me to hear you put it in those words.
Thank you. So you understand the conversation you and I just had previous to this, because your mother came here from fleeing the violence of her country. And when people speak about immigration, it has an impact on you, because sometimes people speak about immigration in a way that they don't understand the true meaning of immigration and immigrants and the struggles that they go through. Continue.
No, I also want to talk a little bit about, I think Edwin kind of posed a question to us about the issues that we kind of see here in the district. And, there's a few that have been really probably exacerbated during the pandemic. And one that I see a lot is the problem of homelessness. That's a real big issue. And I think that's even probably a harder place for us to try to have empathy. I think there's so many people that will kind of just write off the homeless before even giving them a chance to speak. And they'll just assume that it's drugs or alcoholism or some issue, instead of trying to understand the situation of these people. And especially in California, there could be any large number of reasons why somebody is homeless.
So one of the issues that you see is happening in CD-08 is a big problem with homelessness. And moreover, the way people have been writing off homelessness as only a problem with substance abuse, drug and alcoholism, to be specific, rather than some of the other myriad issues that may be associated with homelessness. And that's a big problem for you.
I'm going to use another quote because I just love great quotes, but this one was made famous again by the show Ted Lasso, which for me was a great show that brought heart and community back to TV during difficult times for a lot of people. And he used that quote, "Be curious, not judgmental." And I love this because we can use this so much and it will lead to more empathy if we are curious and have a desire to learn about other people rather than just wanting to judge them on their face. And that applies to so many situations, whether it's homelessness, immigrants, our politicians, or even family members of a different political party, or friends, or just people that we know that have different ideals. We need to be more curious and we need to not try to judge people.
Like it. You ended with a quote by Ted Lasso regarding be curious, not judgmental, whether it comes to homelessness or politicians or family members of other political parties. And it's important that we do that, just to be curious and not judge other people.
Thank you.
Is it me? Okay. Mr. Regan.
I'm listening.
I want to continue the conversation. Thank you, Christopher. I just like the word Christopher. Better than Chris. Sounds like half your name is chopped off.
They both work. Thank you.
We'll call you what su abuelita calls you. I'm gonna call you that. The question that Edwin posed about what we find in the district, and I'm going to juxtapose that again with what I talked about with empathy. I agree with Christopher about homelessness, but I also want to talk about the other issues. You know, we have a myriad of issues in this district, whether it's economic, and they all kind of fit in that economic. You know, homelessness, the lack of adequate health care, because we don't have a hospital here in West County. There's not one very close in Vallejo. You have to travel very far to get to a full service healthcare facility. The educational system is not equitable. So I can put the 3 E's, you know, equitableness. We don't have the connection, so people aren't engaged, right? So there's a lack of engagement, a lack of equity, and a lack of economic opportunities. So I will put those 3.
Thank you, Sheryl. Yeah, I hear you responding to Edwin's question. Like, what are the vital and important issues and conflicts and struggles in Congressional District 8, the new District 8, which is arriving here? And you put it 3 basic themes: economic, equity, and engagement. And you're seeing challenges in people not being engaged and connected, I guess collaborating well. You're seeing the educational system not being equitable. And you're seeing, you know, healthcare, even hospital access is not equitable and is a challenge. And of course, you agree with Chris around the challenge of homelessness and the suffering that's involved there that needs to be addressed.
Yes, and it's not just a homelessness, because we can blame homelessness on a lack of housing, but we can also blame it on a myriad of long-standing bad policies. We can blame it on our healthcare system and a lack of mental health care and this carceral system that chooses to lock people up rather than give them the care that they need. There's a lot of underlying issues that many of us in the community have been working on and championing different policies. We also have to look at other policies. We don't have enough policies that champion clean air, clean water, clean food in a lot of marginalized communities. So our environment is literally killing us.
In this district, the environment, air, water, food, basic human needs are compromised. They're not clean, they're polluted. And when I mentioned homelessness, you say, yeah, well, it's easy to start blaming housing, or, you know, but let's look at actual mental health care and the lacks of that. I'm not sure if you said the justice system. I misheard a word, but something about the justice system that punishes instead of heals, I imagine, and just other longstanding, deeply entrenched patterns affecting homelessness and many other things.
Yeah, criminal legal, that's the word I use.
Criminal legal, thank you. Yep, thank you.
And then we also don't have things that like, we don't have food security for our children and our elders. We don't have adequate economic opportunities, not just jobs, but well-paying jobs for either adults or youth opportunities. And we have had inadequate representation from within the community. We've had a wonderful congressman in Desonier for the last few years, but now we're facing having a congressional rep that lives 80 miles away. And so we need someone from within our communities who knows our communities, who has been living here, who knows the issues in our communities. So all of that goes back to the nature of this forum. We talk about empathy. Empathy cannot be held if you don't live within the community.
Thank you. So I'm hearing this right there, just this fundamental value of, wait a second, like representative power, like living in the community, familiarity, local knowledge of the true issues and suffering or challenges that are happening. And somebody living far away can really miss that. And so, and you want the youth and the elders to be cared for with food security, and also representative, being active in having their voices heard and in creating solutions, like from the people outward. Did I get that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Okay, so I'm facilitating and everything. We're still in the middle of a round. Is Edwin still waiting to, are you up there? Okay, good.
I'm here.
I want to make sure everybody's included. Okay, Edwin, I want you and everyone to know that I was particularly touched by Sheryl's description of living day to day, having to develop almost empathy out of necessity is what I heard. I'm speaking as the white man, pretty privileged here in the Bay Area, like on many, many levels. And so from that perspective, I'm always moved when a person, of color and a religious minority and, all these other layers, right, speaks to this gap between, and also Chris, when you talked about Bobby Kennedy, right, not having to have empathy for certain people, but still having that as a man, of all these privileges. I hear that as a deep reminder. It like softens me up, where many people around me are having to develop those skills of empathy for survival. You need to know when stuff is, people are not on board and you're under threat, and you have to develop so much more when you have to survive. And so when I heard Sheryl describe that, I was just reminded once again of these dynamics in our society, just around privilege. It's not personal. I'm not taking it personal. It's unearned advantage. That's what all privilege is. And it's just such an important thing to remember. And the last word I'll say is character. It's like, yeah, when chips are down, you got to make sacrifices, and things are threatening and scary. What are you going to do to connect or to serve, right? And that's where character kind of comes from. So I agree with Sheryl there too. Sorry, that was a lot of words, Edwin, please.
Yeah, I'm hearing that you're moved by what Sheryl said, and for people who are like yourself, you feel that you're more privileged, and there's maybe a sense of not, well, hearing what Sheryl said softened you up. You felt softer from hearing that, and that there's this people who are underprivileged, perhaps, that don't have the resources that you have. I'm hearing some concern about being able to be present with that. I don't know if I quite got that.
Yeah, I just value that reality, And that's the thing, when you've kind of got things good and you got your part right of the pie, and you're just humming along, and I earned it, but then and maybe I don't want to, I don't have to look and face certain challenges, right? And if I don't have to, the humans, we don't want to, right? So it's easy to kind of isolate and separate from the lived realities of others, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
So let me see if I'm getting this. It's that if you're privileged, you have all these resources, your empathy is, your sensitivity to others people's situations is blocked, and you see that's a real problem, that you're in that situation, or maybe not really empathizing with the needs of others who
Yeah.
are not having all the advantages of life.
It's true, and I'm trained as a social worker, and mental health is important to me, and as well as access to resources and compassion and mutual survival, and even then, because of where I come from, sometimes it's hard to see things. So, it's important for us to just name these themes. I think in any conversation, and I'm grateful.
Mhm. Yeah, so you are trained social workers, so you're kind of trained to be sensitive to these issues, but even with all that training, you maybe are not as sensitive to the needs of others as maybe you could be.
Yeah, and I want to keep working on that.
Yeah,
And
and you'd
so
like to improve it. You'd like to get better. It's kind of like better at listening and empathizing with people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I feel heard. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Edwin.
then I'll speak to Sheryl, if I may. Yeah, one thing I did want to share, Chris was talking about his immigrant family, that one of the reasons that I got into this work with empathy was hearing this family stories, that my family came from the area near Ukraine, Poland, along the border of Ukraine, and they went through World War II. So they kind of lost everything, went through just, kind of the horrors of war. And I just heard about that. And I just saw that, if we can create more empathy between people, it's going to head off those kind of situations.
Christopher's story about his mother immigration journey reminded you of your own family's immigration journey here from an area of the Ukraine near Poland.
Yeah, it was actually in Poland. It's what's now Poland. They were German There's the ethnic groups are all mixed in that central, Eastern Europe, and they were ethnic Germans kind of living in Poland. Yeah.
So your family are actually ethnic Germans living in Poland on the Ukraine border.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
Christopher's mom's immigration story reminded you of your own family's immigration story, which is what got you into this work. Well, was one of the impetuses that got you into this work.
Yeah, because it's just hearing, because during World War II, the Germans had done horrible things to the Russians, and when they came back, they wanted to take their revenge. So on my father's side, everyone was shot, like in the home, except for him, because he was hiding in the barn. And on my mother's side, all the women were kind of repeatedly, raped. So it's kind of the situation you see now in Ukraine, but during World War II, it was probably about 100 times worse.
So during World War II, everyone on your father's side was shot, except for your father, who was hiding. And on your mother's side, the women were raped and abused, as we see now what's happening in Ukraine. And it was at the hands of the Russians that these horrific events occurred.
Yeah, and I do have understanding for the Russians, because my brother now married a Russian. So it's the Germans had done horrible things to the Russians as well. So, it's this escalation that happens. And so anyway, for me, the essence is a lack of empathy. It's that the sides didn't hear each other. There's sort of authoritarianism, on those sides. And I really think that, that's really the core of what I'm seeing is not only do we need kind of a more empathic society here in the United States, and ideally be a model. This seems like we could be a model to the rest of the world. And then, also to be, spreading this to these other countries that are in war, to bring those sides together.
So you understand the Russians from a different standpoint, because your brother married a Russian. And you think that a more empathic model may help both sides speak to one another. And this really could be a model for that type of discussion for not only the United States, but also for the world.
Yeah, and I also appreciate what you were saying about judgment. People are being judged for their race, their class, their education. There's all these different ways we judge each other, right? And those are also, I see as those judgments are blocks to empathy. It's like Timothy saying, you know, if you have all your worldly good, you think of you're sort of blocked from seeing others just for maybe indifference, but and judgment is another block. So I guess I think we need to be reaching out to each other to listen to each other. I keep saying it over and over and over again because I do see it so.
Hey, Edwin, I think it might be your internet. It's cutting in and out for the last 30 seconds.
Oh.
And I'd love for you to say that again. Just take that again from what you were saying about judgment. And if you could say that once again, we could hear it.
Oh, yeah, just that the judgment is a block to empathy. I was just really agreeing that is a real problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you really see judgment, whether it's judging someone for their race, their ethnicity, their abilities, is a block to empathy.
Yeah, I feel very heard. Thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you. I think so I pretty much talked to all three of you. So I think I'll talk to I'll talk to Christopher again. Yeah, and I wanted to again talk about immigration again. I wanted to say something about immigration, and then also about this notion of respect and empathy, and all of it tied in together, because I think we share that kind of same thing in background. And the thing I will say again, because I think it's important that people understand this. And just so you know, when Edwin was speaking, you know, my family happens to have one of my previous name is actually German, so I have a background in German and in Swiss. I have this very mixed DNA, so it's and Imam once said, "People who judge have never been hungry." So that means they have not experienced hardship. They have not experienced a life where they have wanted for something. Then you learn not to judge other people.
So what I'm hearing is that, you know, it's easier for people who have not had difficult experiences, who have not wanted for something, to judge. And it's harder to judge when you have been in that situation where you have been suffering or starving or in need of something.
Whether that need is for food or healthcare or wanting an able body, or not people not looking at you because you look a certain way or sound a certain way, lack education, lack experience, lack housing, or a lack of something. Your tendency to judge someone will be stifled or muted because you know what it feels like to be on the other side of that judgment.
There's so many things that I think people who have things take for granted and don't even consider that could be something that somebody's wanting for. Like you said, the want even just to be looked at as a person that isn't looked at because of your race or another issue, or having an able body. And there's so many of these things that people don't even realize are things that are wanted by others, and they don't take that into account in their empathy.
So my mother used to say, when you pray, you not only pray for the things that you want to be blessed with, but pray for the things that you don't want, that you don't get. So there's so many things in life that we don't want, that we don't have, that we should be thankful for, as well as the things that we don't have that we do want. So we need to be thankful for all of it. You understand?
Yeah, that's it's a great way for your mother to teach you to pray, not only to ask for the things that you want, but be grateful for the things you don't want that you have not been given.
Yes. So that's the thing about empathy that I want you guys to understand. When you say the words, it has to be from the soul and not from just your actions. So and I go back to that before, it is so easy to tell people, you need to have empathy for someone. No, you need to practice in the actions from your soul. What are you willing to give up that you might really, really want so that someone else can have it who really, really needs it and who will really put it into better use of practice than you ever could? That is the sign of character. It goes back to my grandmother used to say, if you have $5 and someone asks you for $5 because they really, really need it, God will find a way for you to get it back.
So I'm hearing that empathy isn't just something you say, or it isn't something that isn't a non-physical action. There is this tangible way to empathize, to give of yourself to others so that you can feel what they're experiencing. And your grandmother saying that if you have $5 and need to give it to someone who needs it more than you, then God will find a way for you to replace those $5 someday.
Yes, thank you.
Wow. Okay. Just as a facilitator, I'd like to speak up very briefly. We're moving towards the end of this particular circle. We've got about 5 more minutes. I'd like to propose something, that we each have a final minute to speak, maybe minute and a half, maybe. I'm just looking at the time. And during that, of course, speak to our question. If there's a summary or something you want to reiterate, or something that you've learned, or maybe comment on this process. How has this been for you, or whatever's present for you in your mind and heart right now? I'd like to give us a short round of, let's say 90 seconds each, to say something, just to summarize our experience and what's truly present in this moment. And so, of course, I invite Chris for you to take it away and begin, pick somebody to speak to, and I'll just set the timer. Okay.
I'll speak to Edwin.
Listening.
So I think one of the things I've kind of considered while we were speaking was, not only is empathy between candidates important, empathy between politicians on the opposite side, it's going to be very important that the candidate that becomes our representative has empathy with all of their constituents. And I want to kind of go off of something that Sheryl said earlier. So it's going to be really difficult to spend lots of time and empathize with people when you're spending half your time in Washington, D.C. And it happens to so many politicians that they become disconnected from their community, and they aren't in touch and they can't empathize anymore. But it's going to be even more difficult for a candidate if they're living 80 miles outside of the district when they are here. So I think it's great how Sheryl brought up the importance of actually being in the community and how much that actually affects the empathy that we're able to be a part of with the community. Because I think, like I said, with elections and lobbyists, you can't empathize with a faceless person or with a corporation. You empathize with people, with your community, with your neighbors, with your constituents, with your leaders. That's how it should be. And I think because there's none of that empathy between representatives and constituents, we have this ultra negativity against all politicians, which some of it might be well deserved, but it's because there is no community there. Everybody thinks that all politicians are either evil or bought, and that's not the case, because it is damaging both sides of that relationship. It is hurting the people who aren't heard, but it's also hurting the people that are supposed to be listening and making them seem like they aren't a person who might care.
Okay, so I was hearing there is it's important for the candidates to listen to each other like we're doing here, but what's really important is for whoever gets elected that they empathize with and listen to the constituents. And you're seeing a concern there. If a candidate lives outside the district, they're not going to be able to really hear and understand the needs of the constituents, especially when they get to Washington, when they have all the pressures, obvious for kind of going for their attention. So really that the candidate, or whoever, not just candidate, but whoever is elected to be listening to the constituents in the district. Did I get that? Okay, then I speak to Timothy. Bye.
Okay, listening.
Yeah, so final wrap up. I'm really grateful to Chris and Sheryl for taking part in this. It's sort of a different approach, and they probably had to overcome a little bit of a barrier. What's this about? So I'm really grateful for them taking part in this. And I also hope we can continue maybe a series of these cafes so that we can sort of bypass the media. We don't have to wait for the media to bring us together. We can come together, bring the other candidates together, and continue these dialogues to post it, directly so the voters can hear us and what our viewpoints are.
Got it. Yeah, Edwin, I hear you're grateful to Chris and Sheryl, and you're making an invitation. Let's do this again and bypass the media so others don't have control over what this particular group of candidates are trying to get out there, especially this kind of connection. Like, let's just do it directly and go for it, and invite all the candidates in this particular CD election. Yeah,
so that's the core. And I had something else, can't remember what it was. It will come to me in a second. So, and I find a lot of when people really listen to each other, like I found a lot of resonance with Chris and with Sheryl and with you, Timothy, that, kind of the core values. I think a lot of them overlap. And yeah, so I really see that importance of, we've all sort of addressed the importance of listening and dialogue and including everyone.
Your last sentence broke up there, but we're addressing the importance of listening and dialogue, and just being in this conversation has brought you a deeper understanding of our shared values as humans. Is that?
Yeah, that's it. Thanks. Sorry for my bad connection. I don't know what happened.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thanks. Okay, Sheryl, I'll just finish up by saying I'm also grateful to be a part of this conversation. I am inspired by the discussion about the realities of empathy and as it relates to character, and also as it relates to human connection and service. Like I believe we serve and steward what we love. And as we are connected to the place where we live, we steward it. As we're connected to the people around us, we come to love them and become familiar with them, and we go into service that way. So connection and love and service are connected for me. And so our connection in this conversation has meant a lot to me, has built that and strengthened my faith and hope in our democratic system.
Yes, you are inspired by the connection made here, and inspired by you believe that connection and service and stewardship are truly connected, and you are inspired for our democratic system based on that, especially by what has happened here today.
Yes, deeply, and I feel fully heard. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so right back at you, since we're finishing this circle.
Okay.
And actually, I'll just be to all of you. How about
Yeah, all three of us.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Make it equal opportunity. And I will just say to all of you, yes, okay. That's the thing about empathy that I want to underscore again is that there's certain privileges we all hold in different ways, but especially in this particular race is the only woman in this race. I always want to just emphasize to people, and as somebody was a disability, I'm very cognizant of that. You know, I use 4 on crutches when I walk, and it's just something that I like to tell people. When you're able-bodied, especially if you're a man in the United States, it's just be cognizant when you're saying things about when you use certain words. And I appreciate Christopher bringing up the word immigrant, but also if you live in a home, if you have a job that pays you good wages, if you have the benefit of accessible and affordable transportation, if you have the ability to eat every day a meal. I'm fasting, so that's very key to me right now. That we are fast willingly, but there's some people who fast not voluntarily, right? The access to clean, fresh water, air, and food. All of those things are privileges that we all must take into account when we talk about the word empathy. So let's be cognizant of that. And it does, yes, sir, Timothy and Edwin and Christopher, it builds character. And our character is promulgated on our ability to have empathy, not in just word, but in deed and service, and at the core of our being from our spirit. So if we're going to move forward, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes, with having additional of these, I would say, make sure it's something that is in the spirit of the meaning, the true meaning of the word, and not just surface or superficiality. Thank you.
Okay. I will attempt to reflect that, but that was so, from my perspective, so eloquent and beautiful. I would feel like I would diminish it. But it's like to honor the specificity of the blessings and gifts that we have every day, and to honor the effect of these gifts and the effect of not just empathy in word, but the effect of deed and move and motion and action that changes not just equality, but equity, but corrects imbalances and reaches out beyond the boundaries of our comfort and our identity, like really to serve the whole. Something like that?
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll stop the recording here. Maybe we can just take a few minutes to see about planning the next circle. Is that